The obsidian walls of the Zapirian High Command Chamber reflected the blood, red glow of 100 holographic displays. Conquered worlds spun lazily above the heads of the assembled warlords, each victory marked by the jagged sigil of the eternal dominion. Supreme Overlord Vexthar lounged on his levitating throne, armored fingers tapping against the armrest in a rhythm that made his subordinates tense. "Show me again," Vexthar commanded, his voice like grinding tectonic plates. Admiral Krell of the Vorak Alliance obeyed without hesitation. The tactical display shifted, zooming in on grainy footage of human warships, blocky, angular things with crude propulsion systems. The USN Defiance floated at the center of the projection, its railgun turrets rotating slowly. A ripple of laughter spread through the chamber. "They still use projectiles," hissed Commander Zix, her chitinous plates vibrating with amusement. "Chemical, propelled slugs? How delightfully archaic." Vexthar's mandibles twitched, and their energy signatures, pitiful barely enough to power a single Zapirian frigate. He leaned forward, the spikes along his back casting jagged shadows. "Tell me, Krell, why did your people ever fear these creatures?" Krell's four eyes narrowed. The Vorak were strategists, not warriors, and their alliance with the Zapirian Dominion had always been one of necessity. "Their history suggests history," Vexthar interrupted. He gestured, and the display shifted to show a human city, smoke rising from collapsed buildings, primitive vehicles fleeing through streets. "Look at them. No plasma shielding, no quantum drives. They haven't even unified their planet under one banner." Another round of laughter. This time, even Krell's junior tacticians joined in. The footage changed again, showing a human research facility. Scientists in white coats huddled around a flickering fusion reactor, their faces streaked with sweat. One of them, a female with short, cropped hair, adjusted a control panel, and the reactor stuttered before stabilizing. "Ah yes," Zix purred. "The mighty fusion technology. We abandoned that millennia ago." Krell watched silently as the humans celebrated their meager success. There was something unsettling about their expressions, not just relief, but hunger. The way they leaned in, as if ready to tear the next breakthrough apart with their bare hands. Vexthar rose from his throne, his armored bulk dwarfing even the tallest Zapirian commanders. "Enough this farce. The Dominion has crushed 100 species stronger than these apes." He turned to the Fleetmaster. "How long to cleanse their homeworld?" "3 cycles, Supreme One," the Fleetmaster replied. "Their orbital defenses are laughable. A single volley from our plasma lances will—" "1 cycle," Vexthar interrupted. He bared his fangs. "I want their planet burning before their pathetic sun rises again." The chamber erupted in cheers. Krell didn't join them. On the display, the human scientists were still gathered around their reactor. One of them, a male with a scar across his brow, looked up suddenly, as if sensing something. His eyes locked onto the camera, and for a fleeting moment, Krell could have sworn the human was staring right at him. Then the footage cut off. "Prepare the armada," Vexthar commanded. "Let the humans serve as an example to the rest of this galaxy." As the warlords dispersed, Krell lingered. The Vorak had records older than the Zapirian Dominion itself, and in those records, buried beneath layers of encrypted data, was a single recurring phrase: "Do not wake them." He glanced one last time at the frozen image of the scarred human. The reactor behind him hummed softly, its light casting long shadows across the floor. Shadows that, for just a second, seemed to twist. The Vorak archives stretched endlessly beneath the dim amber glow of preservation fields. Towering crystalline shelves held the knowledge of 10,000 extinct civilizations, their histories locked in shimmering data orbs. Admiral Krell's armored boots clicked against the obsidian floor as he followed the hunched form of Scholar Yithis, the ancient Vorak's carapace creaking with each step. "You waste time with these records," Krell growled, his mandibles twitching. "The humans are already broken. Their fleet burns as we speak." Yithis didn't turn. his clawed hand brushing against a row of orbs coated in millennia of dust. "You see only what your sensors show you, Admiral, not what lies beneath." He plucked an orb from the shelf, its surface crackling to life. A hologram flickered, a star system, then a flash of light. The planets shattered like glass. Krell's antennae stiffened. "What is this?" "The Corinthi Concordat," Yithis rasped. "A civilization that ruled this arm of the galaxy before the First Purge. They too thought humans were weak." The hologram shifted, showing twisted metal wrecks drifting between dead worlds. They learned otherwise. Krell scoffed, crossing his upper arms. "Ancient history. The humans we face now barely have fusion drives. Their weapons are crude kinetic slugs. You mistake simplicity for weakness," Yithis interrupted, tapping another orb. This one showed a fleet of blocky human warships, their designs archaic by modern standards. "Humans don't advance like other species, they adapt." The image zoomed in. The ships were patched with scavenged alien tech, their railguns jury, rigged to fire plasma. During the Third Expansion War, they engineered an entire Tharxian dreadnought in 6 of their days. A chill ran through Krell's exoskeleton. He leaned closer. "These records are classified." "Suppressed," Yithis corrected, "by order of the last High Matriarch after the Battle of Proxima." The old Vorak's voice dropped to a whisper. "She saw what humans do when cornered, ordered all fleets to avoid their territory for 10 generations. Krell's claws flexed. "And now we've broken that decree." Yithis activated a final orb. A single phrase burned in the air between them, etched in the Vorak's ancient battle script. "Do not wake them." Outside, the distant hum of the Zapirian armada, preparing for Earth's invasion, thrummed through the archives. Krell stared at the warning, his tactical mind racing. "Their current technology is still inferior. Even if they adapt our numbers, you think this is about technology?" Yithis wheezed a laugh, the sound like grinding stone. "The Corinthi had shields that could withstand supernovas. The Tharxian could reshape space-time. The humans burned both to ash." He tapped his temple, "Not with better weapons, with better war." Krell turned toward the exit, his mandibles tight. "Then we crush them before they can adapt." Yithis watched him go, his milky eyes reflecting the fading hologram of shattered worlds. "That," he murmured to the empty archives, "is what they all said." The orb dimmed, plunging the chamber back into silence. Somewhere in the darkness, a data fragment glitched, a distorted recording of human voices screaming a single word as their ship rammed a planet. "Killer. Override." The bridge of the U.S. and Atlantica hummed with quiet tension, the dim red glow of battle stations casting long shadows across the steel bulkheads. Captain Ryan Blake stood at the central holotable, his calloused hands resting on the flickering projection of the Sol system. The scars across his knuckles told stories older than some of the crew serving under him. "Report," Blake said, his voice gravelly from too many years of shouting over engine noise. Lieutenant Jake Morrison leaned over the tactical display, his fingers dancing across the interface. "Long-range sensors just picked up the first wave, sir. Thousands of contacts crossing the Kuiper Belt." His usual cocky grin was gone, replaced by a tight-lipped focus. "They'll be in weapons range in 6 hours. Dr. Lisa Hayes adjusted her glasses, the blue light of her AI diagnostics reflecting in the lenses. The Zapirian signatures matched the profiles from the Proxima engagement. Plasma lances, gravitic disruptors, standard conquest package. She tapped a command into her datapad. But there is something else. Their formation patterns don't make sense for a straightforward assault. Blake's jaw tightened. They're not here to conquer. They're here to exterminate. Across the bridge, crewmen strapped into their stations, checking weapon systems and shield calibrations for the 10th time in as many minutes. The Atlantica was Earth's last line of defense, a relic from the first Mars conflict, retrofitted with every piece of scrap tech humanity could scavenge or reverse. Engineer, Her hull bore the patchwork scars of a dozen desperate battles. Jake cracked his knuckles. "So we're the underdogs again. Just how I like it." Hayes shot him a look. "This isn't one of your sim runs, Lieutenant. That armada outnumbers us 50-1. And Jake grinned, though it didn't reach his eyes. "Makes the victory sweeter." Blake ignored the banter, staring at the holotable as the enemy icons crept closer. The Zapirian fleet moved like a swarm of locusts, their sleek black ships blotting out the stars behind them. He'd seen that formation before, in the archives of the Centauri massacre, where an entire civilization had been reduced to asteroid dust in under 12 hours. "Sound general quarters," Blake ordered. "All hands to battle stations. Activate the sole defense grid." Alarms blared through the ship, the rhythmic pulse of the alert system syncing with the hammering of Blake's heart. On the main view screen, Earth hung serene and blue, unaware of the storm about to break upon it. Hayes hesitated. "Captain, Prometheus isn't ready. The AI core is still unstable. If we activate it now..." "We don't have a choice," Blake said. He turned to face his crew, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Listen up, those bastards out there think we're weak. They think we're primitive. They think we'll break." He slammed a fist onto the holotable, making the projections shudder. "Let's show them what happens when you back humanity into a corner." Jake whooped, punching a command into his console. "Hell yeah, Railgun's hot point defenses online. Let's give 'em a welcome they won't forget." Hayes took a deep breath, then nodded. "Initiating Prometheus startup sequence. God help us all." Outside the Atlantica, Earth's orbital defenses awoke. Massive railgun platforms spinning up, drone swarms deploying like angry hornets, the skeletal frames of half-built warships powering on for one last stand. Blake watched the approaching storm on the view screen, his reflection superimposed over the advancing enemy fleet. "They think we're prey," he murmured. Then louder, "Let's show them we're the hunters." The Atlantica's engines roared to life, her battered hull thrumming with power as she turned to face the darkness head. On, the alarms screamed through the U.S. and Atlantica. As the Zapirian armada emerged from warp, Captain Ryan Blake gripped the armrests of his command chair, watching the tactical display light up with thousands of hostile signatures. The stars vanished behind the sheer mass of enemy ships, sleek, obsidian killers shaped like curved blades, their hulls pulsing with violet energy. "All stations, battle readiness," Blake barked. The bridge crew moved with practiced efficiency, their faces tight with tension. Dr. Lisa Hayes' fingers flew across her console, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. Shields at maximum, railguns charged and targeting solutions locked. LT Jake Morrison's voice crackled over the comms from his fighter bay. "Wing Alpha ready to launch, Captain. Just say the word." Blake didn't get the chance. The first volley of Zapirian plasma fire tore through the human defensive line like a scythe. The USN Defiance, Earth's proudest dreadnought, took a direct hit to its starboard flank. The explosion ripped through its hull, venting atmosphere in a silent, frozen scream. Debris spiraled past the Atlantica's viewport, glowing red, hot from the impact. "Defiance is down," someone shouted. Blake's jaw clenched. "Return fire, all batteries. Focus on their lead destroyers." Human railguns thundered, tungsten rounds streaking across the void. They struck the nearest Zapirian vessel and splashed harmlessly against its shimmering energy shields. Admiral Krell's smug face appeared on the main screen, his Vorak features twisted in amusement. "Is this your best, humans? Projectile weapons? How quaint." Another wave of plasma fire erupted from the enemy fleet. The Atlantica shuddered as a glancing blow scorched its dorsal armor. Alarms wailed as damage reports flooded the bridge. "Shields at Faye," Hayes called out. Jake's fighter squadron streaked into the fray, dodging swarms of Zapirian drones. His voice was sharp over the comms. "They're too fast, Captain. Our targeting systems can't keep up." Blake watched helplessly as another human cruiser, The USN Valiant erupted into flames, escape pods jettisoned, tiny sparks of hope swallowed by the darkness. On the view screen, Supreme Overlord Vexthar's image flickered to life. His crimson eyes burned with contempt. "You see now, human, this is what happens when insects challenge gods." The Atlantica rocked violently as a plasma torpedo slammed into its forward section. Consoles exploded in showers of sparks. Blake tasted blood. He'd bitten his tongue. Hayes grabbed his arm, her voice urgent. "We can't win like this, Ryan. We need Prometheus." Blake wiped his mouth, staring at the carnage on the display. The Zapirian fleet advanced, unstoppable, inevitable. Earth hung in the distance, blue and fragile. He made the call. "Activate it." The bridge of the USN Atlantica shook as another plasma volley slammed into their failing shields. Captain Blake gripped the armrests of his command chair, watching the tactical display flicker with red enemy markers. Half the fleet was already gone. The Defiance floated dead in space, her hull cracked open like an egg. Shields at 12%. Lieutenant Chen reported, her voice tight. Main power conduit ruptured on decks 7 through 9. Blake didn't answer. His eyes were fixed on the massive Zapirian dreadnought looming on the view screen. Its weapon arrays glowed crimson, charging for another salvo. Dr. Hayes stumbled onto the bridge, her lab coat singed at the edges. She clutched a data pad, her fingers leaving smears of soot on the screen. "Captain, we have to try it now." Blake turned. The others watched him, Chen at tactical, Morrison gripping the pilot's yoke, the dozen bridge crew with their hands hovering over dying systems. They all knew what Hayes meant. "Do it," Blake said. Hayes jammed the data pad into the command console. The ship's AI voice crackled to life. "Project Prometheus activation sequence initiated. Warning, experimental protocol." The bridge lights dimmed. Then the entire ship shuddered, not from enemy fire, but from something deep in its own structure. A low hum built in the deck plates, rising in pitch until it vibrated in Blake's teeth. Outside, the Atlantica began to change. Jake Morrison's voice crackled over the comm. "Ah, Captain, you seeing this?" Blake leaned forward. On the view screen, the Atlantica's hull rippled like liquid metal. Sections of armor plates slid and reconfigured. The railgun turrets folded inward, then extended again, their barrels now glowing an eerie blue. "Hayes," Blake said slowly, "what the hell did you build?" Hayes grinned, wild and fierce. "We didn't just study the alien tech we scavenged, we taught it." The Zapirian dreadnought fired. A beam of plasma hotter than a sun lanced toward them. The Atlantica moved, not dodging, not evading. The ship twisted mid-space, her new armor absorbing the blast like a sponge. Where the plasma struck, hexagonal patterns flared gold across the hull, then dissipated the energy harmlessly. "Shields at 98%, Chen whispered. On the tactical screen, the other remaining human ships were undergoing the same transformation. The Defiance, thought dead, suddenly flared back to life, her shattered hull knitting itself back together. Admiral Krell's voice screeched over the comm. "What trickery is this?" Hayes tapped her console. "No trick, just evolution." She punched a command. "Prometheus, engage adaptive weaponry." The Atlantica's railguns fired, but these weren't simple kinetic rounds. The projectiles left blue, white trails as they streaked toward the Zapirian fleet. When they struck, the enemy ships didn't just take damage, they unraveled, their molecular bonds disintegrating under focused antimatter bursts. Blake opened a fleet-wide channel. "All ships, fire at will." Space lit up with human vengeance. The Zapirian armada, moments ago unstoppable, now floundered. Their plasma beams found only empty space as human ships anticipated every shot. Their shields collapsed under railgun fire that adapted to their frequency mid-flight. Their perfect formations shattered as human fighters. Suddenly, twice as fast, dove through their lines like wolves among sheep. On the Dreadnought's bridge, Supreme Overlord Vexthar watched his screens flash with catastrophic damage reports. His second, in common, turned, mandibles quivering. "My lord, their technology, it is learning from us." Vexthar smashed the console. "Impossible, primitive species cannot." A proximity alarm screamed. Jake Morrison's fighter streaked past the Dreadnought's viewports, his voice blasting over an open channel. "Hey lizards, catch." The tactical nuke detonated inside the hangar bay. The Atlantica rode the shockwave forward, her new armor shrugging off the debris. Blake watched the Dreadnought's stern explode, atmosphere venting in great frozen plumes. Hayes leaned back in her chair, wiping sweat from her brow. "Told you it would work." Blake allowed himself a smile. Then he turned to the view screen, where the remaining Zapirian ships were scrambling to retreat. "Chen, open a channel to Vexthar." The screen flickered. The Supreme Overlord appeared, his carapace cracked, one eye leaking green fluid. Blake leaned forward. "You wanted to see human technology, here it is." He gestured to the burning wreckage outside. "We didn't copy your toys. We made them better." Vexthar's hiss cut off as the transmission died. The bridge cheered. Blake let them have their moment. Then he turned to Hayes. "How long until they adapt to our adaptations?" Hayes' grin faded. "Not long. Prometheus is good, but it is not perfect. We bought time, not victory." Blake nodded. He looked at the stars beyond the battle. Somewhere out there, the real war was waiting. Then let's not waste it. The bridge of the USN Atlantica fell silent as Captain Blake straightened his uniform. The holographic display flickered, showing the smoldering wreckage of Earth's orbital defenses. Behind him, Dr. Hayes wiped blood from her temple, her fingers trembling over the console. "Open a channel," Blake said. His voice was calm, but his knuckles whitened around the armrest of his command chair. "All frequencies. I want every Zapirian ship to hear this." Static crackled across the comms before clearing. The main screen shimmered, revealing Supreme Overlord Vexthar lounging on his obsidian throne. The alien's four eyes narrowed in amusement. "Ah," Vexthar purred, mandibles clicking. "The prey begs for mercy." Blake didn't blink. "Mercy." He leaned forward, the dim emergency lights casting shadows across his scarred face. "You don't understand. We don't beg." A murmur rippled through the Zapirian War Council visible behind Vexthar. Admiral Krell's frills twitched, his claws tightening around his data tablet. "You came here thinking we were weak," Blake continued. His words were slow, deliberate. "You saw our ships, our weapons, and laughed, called us primitive, but you made one fatal mistake." Vexthar's tail lashed. "And what is that, human?" Blake's lips curled. "You didn't ask why our tech looked so simple." "Silence," Dr. Hayes tapped a command. Across the battlefield, the crippled USN Defiance, its hull torn open, engines dead, suddenly flared to life. Its shattered railguns reconfigured, barrels glowing blue. Vexthar's throne lurched as he stood. "Impossible. Humanity doesn't fight wars," Blake said, rising to his feet. Behind him, the Atlantica's weapons hummed, charging. "We win them, and we don't do it with fancy toys or superior numbers. We do it by learning, adapting." He bared his teeth. "Surviving." The Defiance fired. A beam of pure antimatter speared through the Zapirian flagship's shields like they weren't even there. Vexthar's hologram flickered as alarms wailed on his bridge. You stole our technology," Blake laughed. It wasn't a pleasant sound. "Stole? No, we improved it." He gestured to the view screen, where the Atlantica's hull plates were shifting, reforging themselves mid-battle. "You gave us the pieces. We built something better." LT Jake Morrison's voice crackled over the comms. "Cap, we're locked and loaded. Just say the word." Blake didn't take his eyes off Vexthar. "You thought you were gods, but gods don't bleed." He tapped his console. The Atlantica's main cannon, a weapon the Zapirians had dismissed as crude hours earlier, powered up, its core pulsing crimson. "Let me show you what happens when you wake a sleeping giant." The cannon fired. The screen went white. When the glare faded, half the Zapirian armada was gone. Vexthar's hologram wavered. His carapace cracked, ichor dripping from his mandibles for the first time in his long, conquering life. The Supreme Overlord looked afraid. Blake leaned in. "Run home. Tell your people what you saw here today." His voice dropped to a whisper, "And pray we don't follow." The channel cut. On the bridge of the Atlantica, the crew erupted into cheers. Blake didn't join them. He stared at the stars, where the remnants of the Zapirian fleet were already fleeing. Dr. Hayes limped to his side. "Think they'll listen." Blake exhaled. "Doesn't matter." He turned to the helm. "Morrison, prep the jump drives. We're not done yet." Outside, the wreckage of two civilizations burned, and humanity, for the first time in centuries, bared its teeth. The Atlantica shuddered as another plasma volley slammed into her starboard shields. Captain Blake gripped the command chair, watching the tactical display flicker. Half his fleet was already scrap metal drifting between Earth and Mars, but the numbers on the screen were changing fast. "Adaptive matrix at 80%, Dr. Hayes reported, fingers flying over her console. The AI's voice, calm, almost bored, echoed through the bridge. Enemy weapon frequency analyzed. Shield recalibration complete. A Zapirian cruiser lined up its main cannon. The blinding lance of plasma streaked toward them, then splashed harmlessly against the Atlantica's newly configured defenses. "What the Blake started," Hayes grinned. "Prometheus isn't just copying their tech, sir. It is learning." Across the battlefield, human ships began to move differently. Railguns that had barely scratched Zapirian hulls now fired shells wreathed in crackling blue energy, antimatter. A direct hit vaporized an enemy destroyer in a silent flash. On the Zapirian dreadnought, Vexthar's claws dug into his throne. Impossible their weapons shouldn't. Overlord. A tactical officer's frills flushed panic. Read, "Their ships are adapting to our attack patterns." There, the screen lit up with new contacts. Dozens of human fighters, led by Jake Morrison's distinctive black, and Gold Wasp, streaked through the chaos. They wove between Zapirian Point, defense fire like they already knew where it would be. "All wings, follow my lead," Jake barked over the squadron channel. "These bastards fight by the book. Time to rip out a few pages." His fighter spun, dodging a plasma burst by centimeters, and unleashed a full missile salvo into a frigate's engine array. The explosion tore the ship in half. Back on the Atlantica, Blake opened a fleet-wide channel. "All ships, switch to pattern Sigma. Let's show them why humans don't need fancy tech to win wars." The remaining human vessels, battered, outnumbered, but far from beaten, formed up not in the rigid formations the Zapirians expected, but in a constantly shifting web. Ships covered each other's blind spots. Railgun salvos timed to millisecond precision. Fighters darting in to exploit every tiny gap in enemy defenses. Vexthar watched in growing horror as his perfect, mathematically superior fleet began to unravel. A human cruiser, its hull blackened and venting atmosphere, rammed a Zapirian battleship at full thrust. Both vessels detonated in a fireball that lit up the void. "Overlord, we're losing too many ships." Admiral Krell's frills were flat against his skull. "Their adaptation rate is..." "Silence," Vexthar snarled. But the numbers didn't lie. Human ships that should have been crippled minutes ago were still fighting, still improving. Jake's voice crackled over the Atlantica's comms. "Captain, I've got an idea. Crazy, even for me." Blake didn't hesitate. "Do it." The Wasp spun away from its squadron, engines flaring as Jake pushed them past Redline. He streaked straight toward the dreadnought's massive hangar bay, dodging flak bursts so close they scorched his wings. "Come on, you ugly son of a..." A plasma bolt clipped his left engine. The Wasp spiraled. Then Jake wrenched it back under control, bleeding speed but still on target. The Zapirian point, defense guns couldn't adjust fast enough. The fighter slammed into the hangar at near suicidal velocity, skidding through rows of parked attack craft before plowing into the inner bulkhead. Jake coughed blood, vision swimming, but his fingers found the detonator. "Hey, Vexthar." He thumbed the comm. "Tell your gods we're coming for them next." The tactical nuke strapped to his fighter's belly detonated. The dreadnought's hangar vanished in a sun-bright flash. Secondary explosions rippled through the massive ship as munitions cooked off. For one frozen second, the Zapirian flagship hung in space, its spine broken. Then the reactor went critical. The shockwave rippled across the battlefield. Human ships rode it out, shields flaring. Zapirian vessels caught in the blast radius weren't so lucky on the Atlantica's bridge. Blake watched the enemy fleet's formation dissolve into chaos. All ships press the advantage, wipe them out. Hayes looked up from her console, eyes wide. "Captain, Prometheus is showing me something. The Zapirians weren't the real threat. There is something else out there, something worse." Blake stared at the view screen, where the last Zapirian ships were scrambling to retreat. "Then we'd better get ready." Outside, Earth's orbital defenses hummed with new energy. The battle was won. The war was just beginning. The bridge of the U.S. in Atlantica was silent, except for the crackle of damaged systems and the slow, steady beep of the proximity alert. Captain Blake gripped the armrests of his command chair, his knuckles white. On the main view screen, the remains of Vexthar's flagship drifted in pieces. Its once gleaming hull now a twisted wreck of molten metal and venting plasma. "All Zapirian vessels are breaking off," Lieutenant Chen reported, her voice hoarse from shouting orders during the battle. "They're jumping to warp." "We did it, sir. We actually did it." Blake didn't answer at first. His eyes were fixed on the debris field, where Jake Morrison's fighter had disappeared in a blaze of fire and defiance. The kid's last words still echoed in his mind. "Tell your gods we're coming for them next." Dr. Hayes leaned against her console, exhaustion written across her face. "Prometheus is stabilizing our systems," she said. "But we took heavy damage. The Defiance is gone. The Olympus is barely holding together. We lost a lot of good people today." Blake finally turned away from the screen. "Patch me through to Earth Command." The comms officer worked quickly, and soon the tired but triumphant face of Admiral Graves appeared on the screen. "Blake," Graves said, his voice thick with relief. "We're seeing it here. The Zapirians are retreating. Earth is secure. For now," Blake said quietly. Graves frowned. "You think they'll be back?" Blake glanced at the star map still displayed on the tactical screen. The Zapirian fleet had been massive, but something told him this was just the tip of the spear. They didn't come here expecting a fight. They came expecting a slaughter. Now they know what we are, and they won't underestimate us again. Hayes stepped forward. "Sir, we're picking up a transmission. It is not Zapirian. It is Vorak." Blake's jaw tightened. "Put it through." The screen flickered, and the aged, scaled face of Scholar Yithis appeared. His golden eyes were solemn. "Captain Blake," he said, his voice like dry parchment, "you have won a great victory today, but you must understand, the Zapirians were not the true threat." Blake felt a chill crawl down his spine. "Explain." Yithis hesitated, as if weighing his words. "The archives spoke of the Terrans for a reason. There are things in the dark between stars that even we fear. The Zapirians awoke something when they came to your system, something that has slept for millennia." Hayes exchanged a glance with Blake. "What are you talking about?" Yithis leaned closer. "The warning was never for us. It was for you. The Terrans were not just warriors, they were keepers, and now the gate is unsealed." The transmission cut out abruptly, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Blake turned to the star map again. A new signal pulsed at the edge of known space, a beacon, ancient and powerful, activating for the first time in centuries. "Set a course," Blake said, his voice low. "We're not done yet." The crew exchanged uneasy looks, but no one argued. The Atlantica, battered but unbroken, turned its nose toward the stars. Behind them, Earth glowed blue and serene, unaware of what was coming. Ahead, the darkness waited,